9:23 a.m., January 3rd, 1943. The telegram hit Henry
December
Kaiser's desk like a
1942.
bullet. 3 words, 12 letters. Schenectady broke clean. Kaiser's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth.
In silence.
Around the conference table,
ship that was
6
supposed to
engineers
change the
froze
war
mid-conversation.
had shattered overnight.
The only sound was the clock ticking
While
on
the
the
front
wall,
lines
each
demanded
tick,
steel,
another
the
second
women
closer
of the
to the
home
next
front
ship,
built a
breaking the
miracle
next
test.
crew drowning.
One weld at a time.
Broke how? Kaiser's
Her name was
voice came
Bessie,
out flat.
An MIT engineer
His secretary
who
had
refused
learned to
let
fear
the
that
warships
tone.
crack again.
In half, sir. The messenger's
theory,
hand trembled,
The welds
holding the
weren't
yellow
problem,
paper.
Snow. The
At
steel
dock,
itself was
Portland
too brittle
Harbor,
in the cold.
6:47 this morning. No
With
storm,
conviction
no
and
load.
courage,
Just
she led thousands
split.
of welders to
Thompson from
rebuild what
MIT
failure
dropped
had
his
broken.
pencil. That's impossible. Tell that to the 2 halves sitting in Oregon right now. Kaiser stood, walked to the window overlooking
Under the
Richmond
silent
Shipyard
rain,
number
She
3.
stood said,
Below
"Not as an
90,000
engineer,
workers moved
but
like
as the
blood
woman who
cells
held the
through the
line
arteries of
between
America's
failure
war
and
machine.
victory."
A Liberty ship launched every 4.5 days. The industrial miracle that was supposed to win the war. Supposed to. How many? Kaiser asked the glass. Sir, how many ships have we lost to structural failure, not torpedoes, not bombs, our own goddamn steel giving up? Silence. The kind that answers questions nobody wants to ask. Production manager Davis cleared his throat, opened a folder he'd been trying to hide under his briefing papers. In the last 14 months, structural failures logged in 206 vessels. 19 broke completely, mostly North Atlantic. Cold water. 206. Kaiser turned around slowly. His face had gone white. We've been building death traps for over a year, and nobody thought to mention this. The war effort. Don't. Kaiser's fist hit the table. Coffee jumped in cups. Don't you dare hide behind the war. My son is on one of these ships. Your nephew, Davis. Your boy graduated Annapolis last month. Where's he assigned? Davis looked at his hands. Liberty ship. SS James Monroe. Left New York yesterday. The room went cold. Meeting adjourned, Kaiser said. Testing starts now. Every hull in production. I want stress readings, metallurgical analysis, and I want to know why our ships are committing suicide. He pointed at Thompson. You find me an answer by tomorrow, or find me someone who can. They scattered like shrapnel. Kaiser stayed at the window. Below, a welder's torch flared white-hot. The spark reminded him of his son's last letter. Dad, the ship groans at night. Like it's in pain. The guys joke about it, but I can hear the worry in their voices. His son was on the SS Robert Peary, launched 6 weeks ago. Still in Atlantic convoy rotation. Kaiser grabbed his coat. 2:15 p.m. Slipway. 7. The inspection team moved through the hull like surgeons exploring a cancer patient. Stress gauges, calipers, men with clipboards marking every weld, every seam. Kaiser followed behind them, learning a new language. The language of metal failure. Residual stress here reads 32,000 psi. One inspector called out. Spec says maximum 15,000. Plate bow on this section 1/4 inch over 30 feet. Weld penetration looks good, but the heat-affected zone shows grain boundary separation. English words, foreign meaning. Thompson caught up to Kaiser, his MIT education written all over his frustrated face. Sir, the math doesn't lie. We're following every specification. The steel meets Navy standards. The welding procedures are textbook. There's no reason these ships should be failing. Except they are. Except they are. Thompson pulled off his glasses, rubbed his eyes. It's like the ships are fighting themselves. The metal wants to come apart. Metal doesn't want anything. It's not alive. Then why does it act like it's trying to escape? Kaiser had no answer. He kept walking, kept watching inspectors mark failure after failure with red chalk. Every red X represented a weak point, a future crack, A potential grave. At section G he stopped. A welder was working alone in the corner surrounded by sample plates. But the work pattern was wrong. Everyone else welded in straight lines, efficient fast assembly line perfect. This welder kept starting in the middle, jumping to the other side, working in a chaotic zigzag that made no sense. "Who authorized that technique?" Kaiser asked the shift supervisor. The supervisor squinted. "That's Hamill. Night shift. She's eccentric. She's wasting time. Actually, sir, her rejection rate is the lowest in the section. We don't know why. She just doesn't produce bad welds." Kaiser watched the welder finish a seam flip, the plate start on the opposite side. When the helmet came off, dark hair spilled out. A woman, maybe 40. Tired eyes that had seen too many night shifts. She caught him staring, straightened. "Sir? You always weld like that." "Like what, sir?" "Like you're solving a jigsaw puzzle instead of following a procedure." Something flickered in her expression. Not defiance. Calculation. Like she was deciding whether honesty would cost her job. "May I show you something, sir?" Kaiser glanced at Thompson. The engineer shrugged. "We're collecting data anyway." The welder Hamill, according to her badge, pulled 2 plates from different racks, both 30 inches square, both welded. One looked perfect, flat, clean textbook. The other looked identical. "Standard procedure," she pointed to the first plate. "My method." She pointed to the second. "They look the same." "Look closer." Kaiser took the standard plate, set it on edge, sighted down the length like a carpenter checking lumber. The plate curved. Not much, maybe a 1/4 inch, but enough to see once you knew to look. He picked up Hamill's plate, sighted down it. Straight. Maybe a 1/16 of bow, if that. "How?" "Because I let it breathe, sir." "Steel doesn't breathe." "Yes, it does." She said it with the certainty of someone who'd argued this point before and lost. When you weld, you heat metal to 3,000 degrees. It expands. When it cools, it contracts. If you weld one side first, that side contracts first. Pulls the whole plate with it. Creates tension. The plate fights itself. Thompson stepped closer. "So you're suggesting our entire welding methodology is wrong?" "I'm suggesting metal has memory, sir. And if you don't give it room to remember both sides equally, it picks a side. It bends." "That's not in any engineering manual." "No, sir. It's in the steel. You have to listen to it." Thompson laughed. Not cruel, but dismissive. The laugh of a man who'd spent 4 years at MIT learning that knowledge came from textbooks, not from welders with dirt under their nails. Kaiser didn't laugh. He was remembering his son's letter. The ship groans at night. "Show me," he said. "Start to finish. Weld a plate your way." "Sir, I'm supposed to be working production." "This is production. If you're wrong, you've wasted 15 minutes. If you're right..." He didn't finish. Couldn't. Hamill set up a fresh plate, put on her helmet. The torch flared blue-white. She started in the center. Small bead. Maybe 3 inches. Then she flipped the plate, welded the opposite side. Back and forth. Center outward. Never in sequence. It looked wrong. Inefficient. Like watching someone write a sentence by alternating words from each end toward the middle. But when she finished and the plate cooled, Kaiser set it on edge. Flat. Perfectly flat. Thompson was already pulling out a stress gauge. "This proves nothing. One sample." "Test it." Kaiser interrupted. "Test them all. Her plates versus standard procedure. I want numbers by morning." "Sir, this will delay production." "Production of ships that break in half is already delayed. We're just calling it drowning instead of manufacturing defects." Kaiser turned to Hamill. "What's your name?" "Bessie Hamill, sir. Welder 3rd class." "Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Building a conference room. Bring your notes. Bring your best explanation for why every engineer in America has been doing this wrong." Bessie's jaw tightened. They won't listen, sir. I know, but you're going to make them anyway. 11:47 p.m. Bessie's apartment. The telegram from the shipyard sat on the kitchen table next to her daughter's asthma medication. Conference 8 a.m. Building A. Mandatory. Mandatory meant fired if you don't show, or fired after you show and they decide you're crazy. Either way, probably fired. Bessie looked at Sarah sleeping in the next room. 7 years old. Lungs that sometimes forgot how to work right. Medical bills that took most of Bessie's paycheck. No husband to help. He'd left when Sarah was 2, said he didn't sign up for sick kids and night shift wives. She could stay quiet. Keep welding. Keep the job. Keep the insurance. Or she could walk into a room full of men tomorrow and tell them they'd been killing sailors because they were too proud to listen to metal. Sarah coughed in her sleep, that wet, rattling cough that meant another hospital trip soon. Bessie opened her notebook. 2 years of observations, sketches of weld patterns, notes about which plates stayed flat and which ones bowed. Stress calculations she'd taught herself from library books after Sarah went to bed. She'd tried to tell her supervisor 8 months ago. He'd patted her shoulder and said, "Sweetheart, you're here to weld, not think. Leave the engineering to engineers." She'd tried to tell the quality inspector 6 months ago. He'd laughed and said, "You know what your problem is. You think too much. Women do that. Overthink. Just follow the procedure." Tomorrow she'd try again, and they'd probably laugh again. But somewhere in the Atlantic, the SS James Monroe was carrying Davis's son through submarine-infested waters. And on the SS, Robert Peary Kaiser's boy was writing letters home about ships that groaned in the dark. Bessie picked up her pencil, started drawing diagrams for men who wouldn't want to see them. Sarah coughed again. Let them laugh, Bessie thought. At least I'll know I tried. Tugged. 7:53 a.m. Building a conference room. 17 men. 17 engineering degrees. 17 reasons this was going to fail. Bessie stood at the door coverall, still smelling like welding smoke, carrying a battered notebook and a piece of chalk. Through the window she could see Thompson reviewing papers with 2 other engineers. One of them glanced at her and smirked. Her hands started shaking. She gripped the notebook tighter. The door opened. Kaiser. Miss Hamill, thank you for coming. Didn't know I had a choice, sir. You don't, but I'm grateful anyway. He lowered his voice. Fair warning, they're going to try to tear you apart. Some of them think this is a waste of time. Others think I've lost my mind. One of them asked if you were my mistress, and that's why we're humoring you. Bessie's face went hot. And you said, I said if they asked that question again, I'd fire them into the Pacific and see if they floated better than our ships. Kaiser opened the door wider. Ready? No. Good. Neither am I. The conference room went quiet when she entered. 17 pairs of eyes tracked her movement to the blackboard. She could hear their thoughts. What's a welder doing here? Why is she in coveralls? Does she even know what residual stress means? Kaiser stood at the head of the table. Gentlemen, this is Bessie Hamill. She's worked night shift in Section G for 2 years. Yesterday she showed me something I've never seen in 30 years of manufacturing. She's going to explain it. You're going to listen. Then we're going to test her theory. Questions later. Mockery never. He sat down. 17 skeptical faces turned to Bessie. She picked up the chalk. Her hand shook so badly the first line came out jagged. This is a steel plate before welding, she started. Her voice came out too quiet. She tried again louder. Standard procedure says weld edge to edge. 1 pass. Efficient and fast. She drew arrows showing the welding sequence. But watch what happens. New drawing. The first edge gets hot, expands, then cools, contracts. Now you move to the next section. That section expands against the section that's already tight. The metal has nowhere to go. Except up, Thompson said from his seat. Not hostile, interested. Basic thermal dynamics. Exactly, sir. The plate bows. Now imagine that same process across 40 feet, 50, 100. Every seam fighting every other seam. The entire hull becomes a battlefield. She drew faster now, confidence building. Liberty ships have over 200 tons of welded seams. If every seam creates residual stress pulling in different directions, you're not building a ship. You're building a time bomb. One engineer, Jameson from General Electric, raised his hand. Miss Hamill, we account for thermal expansion. It's in the calculations. You account for it individually, sir, not collectively. Not the way stresses build on each other. Stack on each other. She drew concentric circles, arrows pointing inward. Like this. Every weld adds pressure. The cold water of the North Atlantic makes the steel brittle. One more wave, one more stress, and... She snapped the chalk in half. The crack echoed in the silent room. The Schenectady didn't break because of one bad weld, Bessie continued. It broke because of 10,000 good welds all pulling in the same direction. It broke because we taught metal to fight itself. Silence. Then Jameson again. So what's your solution? This was it. The moment they'd either listen or laugh her out of the room. Balanced welding, Bessie said. You weld center to edges. Alternate sides. Give the heat somewhere to go. Balance expansion on both surfaces. The metal doesn't know which way to pull, so it stays relatively flat. Relatively... Thompson walked to the board. That's not a specification. Relatively flat could mean anything. Sir, with respect, perfectly flat is impossible. Metal always has some stress, but we can minimize it, control it, work with the metal instead of against it. By welding in a random pattern that slows production by 30%? By welding in a pattern that doesn't kill sailors, sir. The room went still. Thompson's face flushed. That's not fair. My nephew died on the SS Yorkmar, Bessie said quietly. It broke in half last April. North Atlantic. Water so cold he was dead in 4 minutes. He was 19. I taught him to weld when he was 16. So yes, sir, I take this personally. Nobody spoke. Kaiser stood. The test results came in an hour ago. Miss Hamill's sample plates showed residual stress averaging 12,000 psi. Standard procedure averaged 31,000. Her plates stayed flat within 1/16 inch. Standard procedure bowed up to 3/8. He laid the report on the table. Numbers didn't lie. Her rejection rate in Section G is 2.3%. Section average is 18%. She uses the same equipment, same steel, same shift conditions. The only difference is technique. Thompson picked up the report, read it, passed it to Jameson. The paper made its way around the table like a jury verdict. Finally, Henderson from the Naval Architecture Board spoke. Even if this works, and I'm not saying it does, retraining 90,000 welders in the middle of a war, shutting down production for weeks, the Nazis would love that. The Japanese would celebrate. And if we don't? Kaiser asked. How many more ships break? How many more boys drown in water so cold their lungs seize before they can scream? Henderson had no answer. Kaiser turned to Bessie. How long to train one welder in your method? 2 days for basic technique, sir. A week for mastery. But what? They have to unlearn everything first. That's the hard part. Getting them to trust that what feels wrong is actually right. Can you teach it? Bessie looked at 17 men who still weren't sure they believed her. Then she thought about Sarah's medical bills. About her nephew's last letter, saying the ship was making weird noises. But don't worry, Mom, it's probably fine. Yes, sir, I can teach it. Then we start today. Kaiser turned to the room. 3 ships. Control group. SS Benjamin Warner gets built standard procedure. SS Victory Leader and SS Pacific Star get built with Hamill's method. We run parallel production full stress testing, and in 3 months we'll know if we're changing history or wasting time. And if her method fails, Henderson asked. Then I fire myself, and you can tell Congress that Henry Kaiser bet the war on a welder's hunch and lost. Kaiser looked at Bessie. But she's not wrong. I can feel it. And if you've spent any time actually watching steel instead of just calculating it, you can feel it too. 3 engineers stood and left. Just walked out. Their pride couldn't fit in a room where a woman in coveralls might be smarter than their degrees. 14 remained. Thompson was the first to approach Bessie, extended his hand. "I'm sorry about your nephew." She shook it. His grip was firm, respectful. "Teach me," he said. "Show me how to hear what you hear." One by one the others came forward. Not all of them. Not even most. But enough. Kaiser watched from the corner, thinking about his son on the SS Robert Peary. Thinking about all the suns on all the ships breaking apart in cold, dark water. Please, he thought, please let her be right. Outside the shipyard continued its roar, metal on metal, hammers and cranes, the sound of war being built one weld at a time. But in Building A quieter revolution had started, one where listening mattered more than knowing, where feeling mattered more than calculating, where a woman who smelled like welding smoke and stayed up late with a sick daughter had just challenged an empire of engineering pride, and somehow, impossibly won. The test began at 6:00 a.m., February 10, 1943. 3 ships, 3 futures, 1 truth waiting to be proven or destroyed. Bessie stood at the entrance to Slipway 4, watching 200 welders file past her into the morning cold. Some nodded. Most looked away. A few made jokes just loud enough for her to hear. "There goes the professor. Think she'll teach us to curtsy while we weld? My wife's got opinions too. That's why I work night shift." Thompson appeared at her elbow. "Ignore them." "I've been ignoring men my whole life, Mr. Thompson. I'm good at it." "Charles, if we're going to revolutionize shipbuilding together, you should call me Charles." Bessie smiled despite herself. "Your MIT professors know you're taking orders from a woman with a high school diploma." "My MIT professors taught me math. You're teaching me something they never could." He pulled out a leather notebook, already filled with her diagrams copied in careful ink. "How metal thinks." "Metal doesn't think." "Then why does it feel like it does?" Before Bessie could answer, a voice cut through the morning. "Hamill, you're needed in Section G. Now." Her supervisor, Morrison. Face like a clenched fist, voice like gravel in a garbage disposal. He'd been the first to laugh 8 months ago when she'd tried to explain balanced welding. Now, he was assigned to manage the test, and his humiliation wore him like an ill-fitting suit. "What's the problem?" Thompson asked. "Problem is, I got 200 men standing around waiting for instructions from someone who thinks steel has feelings." Morrison spat into the dirt. "We're behind schedule before we even start." "The schedule is 3 months," Bessie said quietly. "It's been 45 minutes. 45 minutes of welders gossiping instead of working. You know what that costs? $300 an hour. Your little experiment is already in the red." Thompson stepped forward. "Mr. Kaiser himself authorized." "Kaiser ain't here. I am. And in my yard, we follow procedures that work, not fairy tales from night shift." Bessie felt the blood drain from her face. This was it. The moment she'd feared. Morrison would sabotage the test report failure, and she'd be back to night shift if she was lucky. Fired if she wasn't. But then something happened she didn't expect. A welder stepped out of the crowd. Big man, scarred hands, face that had seen 30 years of shipyards. His badge read, "Kowalski, lead welder." "Morrison," Kowalski said. "Shut up." The silence was absolute. "My boy's on the SS Nathaniel Greene." Kowalski continued. "Left Halifax 3 days ago. Every night I pray that ship holds together. Every morning I wake up wondering if today's the day I get the telegram." He turned to Bessie. "You saying you can make ships that don't break? I'm saying I can try. Then teach me, teach us all, because I'd rather learn from someone who's trying something new than keep doing what we know kills people." One by one, other welders stepped forward. Not all of them, maybe 30 out of 200, but 30 was enough. Morrison's face went purple. "Kowalski, you're saving my son's life," Kowalski finished. "Fire me if you want, but you'll have to fire the rest of us too. And good luck building ships with no welders." Morrison looked at the crowd, calculated, realized he was outnumbered by basic human decency. "Fine," he spat. "But when this fails, and it will fail, I'm reporting every minute of wasted time to Kaiser personally." He stalked off. Bessie exhaled. Her hands were shaking again. "Miss Hamill?" Kowalski's voice was gentler now. "Where do we start?" She looked at 30 faces, 30 pairs of hands that had spent years learning one way, now willing to unlearn everything because someone they loved was at sea. "We start," Bessie said, "by forgetting everything you think you know about welding." The first day was chaos. Welders kept defaulting to old patterns. Muscle memory fought conscious thought. Bessie watched a man named Chen start a perfect center weld, then automatically drift to edge-first technique halfway through. The plate came out twisted like a carnival mirror. "Damn it!" Chen threw his helmet. "I can't do this. My hands won't obey my brain." "Then stop thinking," Bessie said. She picked up his helmet, handed it back. "You ever play piano?" "What, no?" "Me neither. But my daughter takes lessons. Her teacher says you can't think about each finger. You have to feel the music. Let your hands follow the rhythm." She set up a fresh plate. "Welding's the same. Don't think about procedure. Feel the heat. Listen to the metal. It'll tell you when to flip, when to pause." "That's insane." "Maybe, but try it anyway." Chen put his helmet back on, started welding. This time, when his hands drifted toward old habits, Bessie touched his shoulder. Not to stop him, just to remind him to listen. The plate came out straighter. Not perfect, but straighter. "Again," Bessie said. By lunch, Chen had produced 3 acceptable plates. By dinner, 7. By the end of the week, he was teaching others. That's how revolution happens. Not in grand declarations, but in one person teaching another person who teaches another. Knowledge spreading like a benevolent virus. But viruses have antibodies. And Morrison was immune to change. 3 weeks in the sabotage started. Small things at first. Supply requisitions that got lost. Stress gauges that mysteriously malfunctioned. Bessie's teaching schedule conflicting with shift rotations so half her students couldn't attend. Then, bigger things. On March 5th, Bessie arrived to find her sample plates missing. All 47 of them. 3 weeks of careful documentation gone. Morrison shrugged when she confronted him. "Probably recycled. Scrap metal's valuable in wartime. Can't keep track of every piece." Those were labeled, numbered, tracked. Mistakes happen. Thompson was ready to file a formal complaint. Bessie stopped him. "It doesn't matter," she said. "Like hell it doesn't. He's destroying evidence." "He's scared. Men do stupid things when they're scared." She pulled out her notebook. "I photographed every plate, recorded every measurement. He can destroy steel, but he can't destroy data." That night, Bessie worked late copying her notes. She made 3 copies, kept one at the yard, one at home, one in a safety deposit box at the bank. Sarah helped her carefully transcribing numbers in her child's handwriting. "Mama, why is that man mean to you?" "Because I'm trying to change something he thinks is already perfect." "But the ships break." "I know, baby." "Then it's not perfect." Bessie hugged her daughter. 7 years old and already understanding what Morrison refused to see. "No, it's not." Dead. April 17th. The first test results came in. Kaiser assembled everyone in the main conference room. Engineers, welders, Navy inspectors, Maritime Commission representatives. Even Morrison showed up, arms crossed, face set in a sneer. The stress analysis reports covered the table like evidence at a trial, which in a way it was. Bessie on trial for daring to think. Morrison on trial for refusing to. Commander Phillips from the Navy opened the first folder. SS Benjamin Warner, standard construction. Final stress testing shows residual stress averaging 28,000 psi across major hull plates. 14 critical points exceed 35,000 psi. Metallurgical analysis indicates high probability of brittle fracture in temperatures below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. He set down the folder, opened the second. SS Pacific Star, Hamill method. Residual stress averaging 11,500 psi. No critical points exceed 18,000 psi. Metallurgical analysis shows grain structure consistent with controlled thermal cycles, significantly reduced fracture risk. The room erupted. "That's impossible," someone shouted. "The measurements must be wrong." "Did we use different steel?" Phillips raised his hand. Silence fell. "Same steel, same suppliers, same welders in many cases. The only variable was technique." He looked directly at Morrison. "Hamill's method works, indisputably." Morrison's sneer faltered. "But production time increased by 32%. Phillips interrupted. "Which sounds bad until you realize we're currently losing ships at a rate that requires building 40% more vessels to maintain fleet strength. If Hamill's method reduces failures by even half, we gain net efficiency." "We haven't proven it reduces failures," Morrison argued. "Just stress readings. That doesn't mean—" "My son wrote me last week," Kowalski said from the back of the room. Everyone turned. "He's on the SS Pacific Star, one of the test ships. He said it's the first ship he's been on that doesn't groan at night. He said it feels solid, quiet, like the steel is resting instead of fighting." His voice cracked. "That's my boy saying that. My boy who knows I helped build his ship the new way. So don't you dare tell me it doesn't matter." Morrison had no response. What could he say to a father's fear and hope tangled together? Kaiser stood. Effective immediately, all new construction adopts the Hamill balanced welding method. We're retraining the entire workforce. Morrison, you'll oversee the transition. Morrison's face went white. "Sir, you'll oversee it because you're the best supervisor we have, and because I believe even stubborn men can learn when their country needs them to." Kaiser's voice softened slightly. "We're all learning, Morrison. Some of us just learn slower than others." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a chance. Morrison took it with clenched teeth and wounded pride, but he took it. The retraining took 8 weeks. Bessie worked 20-hour days, teaching, correcting, answering questions, proving over and over that, yes, this works. Yes, trust the process. Yes. Metal has memory and rhythm and a language all its own. Some welders took to it naturally. Others struggled. A few refused and were reassigned to other tasks. But most learned, because most had someone at sea. A son, a brother, a nephew, a friend. Someone whose life depended on steel holding together in cold, dark water. Thompson became her assistant, translating her intuitive knowledge into engineering terminology that could be taught in classrooms. Together, they wrote the manual that would eventually be distributed to every shipyard in America. "You know what's funny?" Thompson said one night, both of them exhausted, surrounded by diagrams and coffee cups. "MIT taught me to calculate stress. You taught me to feel it, and feeling it makes me better at calculating it." "Because the math follows the metal," Bessie said, "not the other way around. They should put that on our diplomas." Sarah's condition worsened in May. Bessie missed 3 days of work sitting beside a hospital bed watching her daughter fight for breath. The medical bills piled up faster than her paychecks could cover them. When she returned to the yard, she found an envelope on her desk. Inside, a check from Kaiser personally. Enough to cover the hospital. Enough for 2 months of medicine. The note said simply, My son writes that his ship is the quietest he's ever served on. Thank you for giving me hope. H.K. Bessie cried for the first time since her nephew died. Not from sadness. From the strange realization that sometimes doing the right thing costs everything and pays back in ways you never expected. June 15th, launch day for SS Victory Leader, the first ship built entirely with balanced welding, 3 months from keel to launch. Every weld placed by welders who'd learned to listen to steel instead of just joining it. Bessie stood on the platform beside Kaiser. Below them, 90,000 workers had stopped to watch. This ship was their declaration, their proof, their rebellion against the tyranny of, "We've always done it this way." The champagne bottle broke. The ship slid into the water, clean, smooth, perfect. And everyone held their breath waiting for the sound they all feared. The crack, the groan, the metallic scream of steel coming apart. It never came. The ship sat in the water like it belonged there. Quiet, solid, at peace. The cheering started slowly. 1 person, then 10, then 100. Then the entire shipyard erupted in a roar that could probably be heard in Oakland. Kowalski found Bessie in the crowd, grabbed her in a bear hug that lifted her off her feet. "My boy's ship is next. They're transferring him to the SS Pacific Hope, named after what you gave us." Bessie couldn't speak, could only nod. Morrison approached awkward, clearly uncomfortable, extended his hand. "I was wrong. About you. About all of it." She shook his hand. His grip was firm now, respectful. "I'm still an ass," he continued. "That won't change, but I'm an ass who's going to make damn sure every welder in this yard learns your method, because—" He paused, swallowed. "Because my brother's on a Liberty ship, and I'd like him to come home." "We'll bring him home," Bessie said. "All of them." That night Kaiser held a celebration. Champagne and speeches, recognition and awards. The governor came. The press. Everyone who wanted to be seen celebrating the triumph of American ingenuity. Bessie left early. Took the bus home. Found Sarah sleeping peacefully, her breathing steady for the first time in weeks. She sat beside her daughter's bed and opened her notebook. On the last page, she wrote June 15, 1943. "Today we launched a ship that knows how to breathe. Today, 90,000 people learned to listen. Today, we proved that the quietest voice in the room can change the world if the world is brave enough to lean in and hear it. My nephew is still dead. That won't change. But maybe some other mother's son will come home because we learned to let steel breathe. That's enough. It has to be enough." Outside her window, the shipyard continued its work. The sound of metal on metal. The sound of war being won, one weld at a time. But underneath that sound, if you listened carefully, you could hear something new. The sound of steel resting. Quiet. No longer fighting itself. The sound of hope measured in PSI and plate thickness and temperature cycles. The sound of a woman who'd taught the world that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply paying attention to what's been screaming at you all along. The telegram arrived August 3, 1943, 2:17 p.m. Bessie was teaching a class of 35 welders when Morrison walked in face gray, holding the yellow paper like it might bite him. "Hamill. Outside. Now." The welders went quiet. Everyone knew that tone. Everyone knew what yellow telegrams meant. Her legs moved on their own. Through the door. Into the hallway. Morrison's hand on her shoulder, the first kind touch he'd ever given her. "It's not Sarah," he said quickly. "Your daughter's fine." The relief lasted exactly 1 second before terror replaced it. If not Sarah, then it's Kowalski's boy. SS Pacific Star. Torpedoed 400 miles off Iceland. Went down in 11 minutes. Morrison's voice cracked. 23 survivors. His son wasn't one of them. The floor tilted. Bessie grabbed the wall. But that ship, we built it right. The balanced welding. It passed every test. It wasn't the ship, Morrison said. German U-boat. 3 torpedoes. Even the best steel can't survive that. Bessie's mind refused to process it. David Kowalski, 22 years old. She'd met him once when he visited the yard, watched his father show him the welds they'd done together, the pride in both their faces. David had shaken her hand and said, "Thank you for keeping my dad safe while he keeps me safe." And now he was dead. Not from faulty steel, from 3 tons of explosives designed to kill regardless of how well you'd built your ship. "Where's Kowalski?" Bessie asked. "Slipway 7. He's been standing there since the telegram came. Won't move. Won't talk. I thought maybe you—" Morrison trailed off. She found him standing at the water's edge, staring at the hull of a half-finished Victory ship. His hands hung at his sides like dead things. His face looked carved from stone. "Mr. Kowalski." He didn't turn. They said it was quick. That's what they always say. Quick. Like that makes it better. Like dying in 7 minutes instead of 70 matters when you're drowning in the North Atlantic. Bessie stood beside him. Said nothing. What could she say? What words existed for a father's grief? "I keep thinking," Kowalski continued, "if we'd built it the old way, if it had broken apart sooner, maybe he would have got to a lifeboat faster. Maybe the delay killed him. Maybe I killed him by making the ship too strong to break." "Don't." Bessie's voice came out sharper than intended. "Don't do that. Your son died fighting Nazis. He died on a ship that held together long enough for 23 boys to get off alive. 23 mothers who won't get telegrams because we built that ship right. But my boy, your boy, died honorably on a ship his father helped build with love and skill and everything you knew how to give him." She grabbed his arm, forced him to look at her. "We can't build ships that survive torpedoes, Mr. Kowalski. We can only build ships that give men a fighting chance. Your son had that chance. 23 boys used that chance. That's because of you, because of what we learned together." Kowalski's face crumpled. He sobbed once harsh and broken, then caught himself, straightened, nodded. "I need to work," he said. "I can't go home yet. I can't tell my wife yet. I just need to weld something." "Then let's weld." They worked side by side until midnight. Not talking, just welding. The rhythm of heat and metal and controlled chaos. The only language they both spoke fluently. At 11:47 p.m. Kowalski set down his torch. "My wife's pregnant. 3 months. David was going to be a big brother." He laughed bitterly. "Now he's going to be a ghost at the dinner table." Bessie had no words. She just gripped his shoulder and held on while he shook. The next morning, 17 more telegrams arrived. Ships sunk by U-boats, mines, aerial attacks. Some were Liberty ships with old construction. Some were Victory ships with balanced welding. The torpedoes didn't care about technique. Kaiser called an emergency meeting. His face had aged 10 years overnight. "We're losing ships faster than we can build them," he said without preamble. "The Germans have refined Wolfpack tactics. They're targeting convoys, overwhelming escorts. Our ship's old method or new are dying at a rate of 43 per month." "So what do we do?" Thompson asked. "Build faster. Build more. Build until we're launching 4 ships a day instead of 2. Kaiser looked at Bessie. "Which means we need your method to become standard operating procedure across every American shipyard. Not just Richmond, everywhere." "That's 18 shipyards," Bessie said. 47,000 additional welders to train. That's impossible." "So was what you already did. But you did it anyway." Kaiser slid a folder across the table. "The Navy's authorizing a training program. You'd travel to each yard, spend 2 weeks teaching supervisors who'd then train their crews. 6 months, total deployment, full military contractor status, triple your current pay." Bessie stared at the folder. Didn't open it. "What about Sarah?" She needs her medication every 6 hours. She needs me home when her breathing gets bad. The Navy's arranged for a private nurse. Full-time. Best in California. All expenses covered. Kaiser's voice softened. Bessie, I know what I'm asking. But David Kowalski died yesterday. 17 other boys died yesterday. And today, 40 more will die. We can't stop the torpedoes. But we can give every single one of them the best chance possible. She thought about her nephew, about Kowalski's son, about all the telegrams that hadn't been sent yet but would be. When do I leave? Tomorrow. First stop Brooklyn Navy Yard. They're our biggest bottleneck. That night, Bessie packed a single suitcase. Sarah sat on the bed, watching, small and fragile, and too young to understand why her mother had to leave. You're going to save people, Sarah said, not a question. A conclusion drawn from 7 years of watching her mother choose sacrifice over safety. I'm going to try. Mama, when you come back, will the war be over? Bessie knelt, hugged her daughter. I don't know, baby. But when I come back, more boys will have a chance to come home too. Sarah's asthma inhaler sat on the nightstand. Bessie picked it up, held it like a talisman. This small metal cylinder represented every reason she wanted to stay, and every reason she had to go. Mrs. Chen will take care of you, Bessie said. She'll make sure you take your medicine, and I'll call every night, I promise. I know. Sarah hugged her tighter. I'm scared, but I'm proud. Is that weird? No, baby, that's brave. The train to New York left at 6:00 a.m. Bessie watched California disappear through the window. Her notebook open on her lap. Diagrams and calculations spread across the pages like a map to a country that didn't exist yet. Brooklyn Navy Yard, September 12, 1943. The yard supervisor's name was Patterson. Face like a brick wall, voice like a cement mixer. He met Bessie at the gate with arms crossed and skepticism radiating from every pore. So, you're the miracle worker Kaiser sent. I'm the welder Kaiser sent. Miracles are above my pay grade. Patterson almost smiled. We got 11,000 welders here. 2 shifts. Maximum production rate. You're telling me we gotta slow down and retrain everybody in the middle of the biggest naval operation in history. I'm telling you that your current method is killing sailors and you know it. His face hardened. Careful. We've lost ships, sure, but we've also launched 214 vessels that are winning this war. And how many of those 214 are still afloat? Patterson's jaw tightened. He knew the numbers. Everyone knew the numbers. They just didn't say them out loud. My son's on the SS Benjamin Harrison, Patterson said quietly. Liberty ship. Old construction. Left Murmansk 3 days ago. He pulled out a letter worn from repeated reading. He writes that the ship moans at night, says it sounds like it's in pain. What am I supposed to tell him, that his father built him a coffin? You tell him you're fixing it, starting now. Patterson stared at her, then nodded once. You got 2 weeks. Make them count. Brooklyn was harder than Richmond. The welders were older, more experienced, more convinced they already knew everything. Bessie faced 50 men on the first day, every single one of them radiating hostility. I've been welding since before you were born, one man said. Name tag read Dubois. You gonna tell me I've been doing it wrong for 30 years? I'm going to tell you that 30 years ago, we weren't building ships this size, this fast, with this much stress. The war changed the rules. We have to change with it. By listening to steel. Dubois laughed. Others joined in. What's next, consulting our horoscopes? Bessie walked to the demo table. Set up 2 plates. You weld one your way. I'll weld one mine. We'll measure the results and let the steel decide who's right. Dubois stepped forward. You're on. They worked in silence. Dubois fast and confident, decades of muscle memory flowing through his hands. Bessie slower, more deliberate, feeling each pass, listening to the metal's response. When they finished, Bessie pulled out calipers, measured Dubois's plate. 0.32 inches of bow across 36 inches. She measured her own. 0.08. 4 times flatter, she said quietly. And that's after 1 plate. Imagine a whole ship. Imagine every seam fighting every other seam because we're too proud to admit we might be wrong. Dubois stared at the numbers. Do it again. They welded 3 more plates. Same results every time. By the 4th plate, Dubois was asking questions. By the 5th, he was trying her technique. By the 6th, he was teaching the man next to him. That's how it went in every yard. Resistance. Demonstration. Reluctant acceptance. Gradual conversion. Some men never learned. Some learned but refused to teach others. But most came around because most had someone at sea, and love is a stronger motivator than pride. Philadelphia Navy Yard, October 1943. 9,000 welders in 4 weeks. Norfolk, November 1943. 14,000 welders in 5 weeks. 3 supervisors walked off the job rather than teach women. Bessie trained their replacements personally. New Orleans, December 1943. Christmas away from Sarah. Phone calls where her daughter coughed through carols, and Bessie cried in a hotel room afterward, wondering if saving strangers was worth losing time with the one person who mattered most. But the telegrams kept coming. Not to Bessie to the yards. Yellow paper announcing losses. SS Richard Hovey broken in half, 43 dead. SS John P. Gaines torpedoed and sunk, 19 survivors. SS Elihu Root fractured keel, limped into port, but declared total loss. Every telegram Bessie saw she memorized. Every name became a weight she carried. Every death a reminder that she wasn't working fast enough, teaching well enough, saving enough lives. Portland, January 1944. The yard where SS Schenectady had broken exactly 1 year before. The supervisor took Bessie to the spot, showed her where the 2 halves had floated like obscene sculptures. We never figured out why, he admitted. Just that morning ship was whole. That afternoon 2 pieces. Like God reached down and snapped it for fun. It wasn't God, Bessie said. It was us. We heated metal until it hated itself, then expected it to carry boys across the ocean. She knelt, touched the dock where the ship had died. This doesn't happen anymore. Not if we do this right. Training resumed. Bessie taught until her voice gave out, then taught through the hoarseness. She welded demo plates until her hands cramped, then kept welding. She answered the same questions in 18 different yards, explained the same principles to skeptical men who all thought they were unique in their resistance. But slowly, yard by yard, welder by welder, the method spread. By March 1944, every major American shipyard had adopted balanced welding. Production slowed initially 28% decrease in launch rate. Congress demanded investigations. Newspapers ran headlines, Kaiser's gamble, slower ships for safer seas. Then the data started coming back. Ships built with balanced welding showed 73% fewer structural failures. Even when torpedoed, they lasted longer, gave crews more time to evacuate. The survival rate on Victory ships was nearly double that of early Liberty ships. The numbers didn't lie. Boys were coming home who wouldn't have otherwise. But not all of them. Never all of them. March 15, 1944. Bessie was in Seattle when the telegram found her. Not yellow this time. White. Personal. From Kaiser. SS Robert Peary hit mine off Norway. Sank in 18 minutes. 142 survivors. My son among them. He says the ship held together long enough. Says he wouldn't be here without what you taught us. I don't have words for what I owe you. H.K. Bessie read it 3 times. Kaiser's son alive. Her teaching her method, her middle-of-the-night observations had saved the life of the man who'd gambled his entire empire on her hunch. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt exhausted. Because for every Kaiser's son who survived, there was a Kowalski's son who didn't. For every success, a failure. For every telegram announcing survival, 3 more announcing death. The war was a math problem with no right answer. You could only minimize loss, never eliminate it. Seattle. Navy Yard, April 1944. Her last stop. 6 months on the road. Sarah's 8th birthday missed. Her daughter's asthma attacks managed by nurses, while Bessie taught strangers how to save other people's children. The guilt was a physical thing heavy in her chest, like bad welding stress concentrations in her heart that no amount of technique could fix. On her final day, a young welder approached her. Couldn't have been more than 19, face still soft with youth, not yet hardened by war. "Miss Hamill, I'm shipping out next week. Volunteered for the Merchant Marine. They're putting me on the SS Pacific Crown. Victory ship, built with your method." He swallowed hard. "I just wanted to say thank you. My mom's terrified, but I told her the ships are better now, because of you." That helped her sleep. Bessie looked at this boy man heading into submarine-infested waters on a ship built with techniques she'd taught. If he died, would it be despite her method, or because she hadn't taught it well enough? "What's your name?" "Marcus Webb, ma'am." "Marcus Webb, you come home safe. You hear me? You come home and you tell your mother that I made you a promise that ship will hold. It'll hold against everything the ocean throws at it. And if it doesn't, if something happens..." She gripped his shoulder. "If something happens, you fight. You survive. Because every boy who comes home proves we did something right." He nodded, eyes bright. Too young, too brave, too fragile. The train home took 4 days. Bessie stared out windows at a country she'd crossed 6 times in 6 months, teaching a war's worth of welders how to listen to metal. Her notebook was full. Her body was exhausted. Her heart was empty. Richmond Station, April 23, 1944. Sarah waited on the platform with Mrs. Chen, skinnier than before, paler, but alive and smiling, and running into her mother's arms like Bessie was the only gravity that mattered. "You're home?" Sarah whispered into her mother's neck. "I'm home." That night, tucked into her own bed for the first time in half a year, Bessie dreamed of ships. Not breaking, not sinking, just floating quietly under stars, carrying boys who would become men, who would have children, who would never know that their existence depended on a welder who taught the world to let steel breathe. She woke at 3:00 a.m. to Sarah's coughing, administered medication, held her daughter until the breathing steadied. Through the window she could see the shipyard lights still burning, night shift still working, still welding, still building ships with the technique she'd spread across the country like gospel. And somewhere in the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Arctic boys were sleeping in bunks on ships that groaned less, broke less, gave them better odds. Not perfect odds. War allowed no perfection. But better. Measurably better. In the mathematics of survival, sometimes better was enough. The war ended May 8, 1945, but Bessie didn't celebrate. She was at the hospital with Sarah when the announcement came over the radio. Victory in Europe. Hitler dead. The Third Reich collapsed. People in the streets were crying, cheering, kissing strangers. Church bells rang across Richmond like the sky itself was singing. Sarah looked up from her oxygen mask, eyes bright with fever. "Did we win, Mama?" "Yes, baby, we won." "Because of your ships." Bessie stroked her daughter's hair. "Because of a lot of things, a lot of people." What she didn't say: because 405,399 American servicemen died, because 671, 278 were wounded, because the cost of winning was measured in caskets and missing limbs, and men who'd never sleep peacefully again. The ships had helped. The statistics proved it. Of the 531 Victory ships launched with balanced welding, only 3 suffered catastrophic structural failure, compared to 441 Liberty ships built before the method change, with 223 total losses to structural issues. Numbers. Cold. Clean. Hiding the fact that 3 failures still meant 3 crews, 3 sets of telegrams, 3 clusters of mothers who'd never see their sons again. Mathematics couldn't account for grief. Thompson found her in the hospital cafeteria at midnight, coffee cold in front of her, staring at nothing. "Bessie, we've been looking for you. There's a ceremony tomorrow. Navy's giving out commendations. Kaiser wants you there. They're calling you the woman who saved the fleet." "I didn't save anyone," Bessie said flatly. "I just made the odds slightly better." Nah. 387 sailors survived ship failures that would have killed them otherwise. Naval intelligence confirmed it. Your technique gave them time to evacuate. Those are lives, Bessie. 387 beating hearts because you were stubborn enough to argue with engineers. And the ones who died anyway. The ones on ships I trained, the welders for ships I personally inspected, who went down because a torpedo doesn't care how balanced your welding is. Her voice cracked. "You want me to stand on a stage and accept an award while David Kowalski's mother buries an empty casket?" Thompson sat down across from her. "His mother will be there tomorrow. She specifically asked for you." Bessie's stomach dropped. "Why?" "Because she wants to thank you. Because David's last letter home mentioned the ship felt solid, felt safe. Because even though he died believing his father had given him the best chance possible." Thompson slid a telegram across the table. She wrote this, read it. Bessie picked up the paper with shaking hands. "Miss Hamill, my son David died doing his duty on a ship his father helped build with pride. Stanley tells me you taught him to make steel breathe, to listen to what the metal needed. I think maybe that's what we all need to learn. To listen. To breathe. To give each other the best chance we can. David had that chance because of you. He didn't make it, but 23 other boys did. Their mothers get to sleep at night. That's because of you too. Please come tomorrow. Let me thank you for giving my husband something to be proud of, even in his grief. Martha Kowalski." Bessie read it 3 times. The words blurred. "I don't deserve this." "None of us deserve anything," Thompson said quietly. "We just do our best and hope it's enough. Come tomorrow. Let people thank you. Let yourself believe that what you did mattered." The ceremony was at noon in the main assembly yard. 3,000 workers, press photographers, naval officers in dress whites, a podium draped in bunting, the whole production. Bessie wore the only dress she owned, 15 years old, and let out twice to account for weight she'd gained, then lost, then gained again, through years of night shifts and stress. Sarah sat in the front row, with Mrs. Chen's oxygen tank hidden discreetly under her chair. Admiral Chester Nimitz himself presented the commendation. The Navy Distinguished Public Service Award. Gold medal in a velvet box. Words about innovation, dedication, saving American lives. Bessie stood there feeling like a fraud. She hadn't saved lives. She'd just made ships slightly less likely to commit suicide. The real heroes were dead in the Atlantic Pacific Arctic. Boys who'd never come home to receive medals. Then Martha Kowalski approached the podium. She was smaller than Bessie expected. Gray hair pulled back severely. Eyes that had cried themselves dry. She took the microphone with hands that trembled. "My name is Martha Kowalski. My son David was 22 when he died on the SS Pacific Star. The Navy says he drowned when a German submarine torpedoed his ship 400 miles off Iceland." Her voice caught, steadied. "But before he died, he wrote home. Told us about the ship, how solid it felt, how his father had helped build it, how a woman named Bessie Hamill had taught them all to make steel that didn't fight itself." She turned to look directly at Bessie. "You didn't save my son. I know that. Nothing could have saved him from 3 torpedoes. But you gave him confidence. You gave his father purpose. You gave 23 other mothers their sons back alive, and you gave me the knowledge that my David died on a ship built with love and skill and everything we knew how to give him." Martha stepped down from the podium, walked directly to Bessie, embraced her. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for trying." Bessie couldn't speak, could only hold this woman who'd lost everything and somehow found grace in the wreckage. The ceremony continued. More speeches, more awards. Kaiser received recognition for innovation in mass production. Morrison got a supervisor's commendation. Even Thompson was acknowledged for technical documentation. But Bessie kept thinking about Martha's words. Thank you for trying, not for succeeding, not for winning, just for trying. Maybe that's all any of them could do. Try, keep trying. Even when the trying wasn't enough, even when boys still died, even when victory cost more than anyone wanted to pay. After the ceremony, Bessie found Morrison smoking behind the assembly building, hiding from the celebration. You avoiding the party too? She asked. He stubbed out his cigarette. Doesn't feel right, celebrating. My brother made it home, but he's different. Won't talk about what he saw. Wakes up screaming. The ship held together, but he didn't. Morrison's voice went rough. How do you fix that? How do you weld a man's mind back together? I don't know. Me neither. He lit another cigarette. I was wrong about you. I know I said it before, but I need to say it again. I was wrong and my pride almost cost lives, and I'm sorry. You changed. That's what matters. Did I, or did I just learn to hide it better? He laughed bitterly. I still think women should be home with their kids. I still think welding is men's work. But I also know that you're better at it than me, and that pisses me off, and I can't figure out if that makes me honest or just a different kind of ass. Bessie almost smiled. At least you're thinking about it. Most men never get that far. Yeah, well, war changes things. Doesn't mean we understand the changes. He flicked ash. Your daughter doing okay? For now, the medicine helps. But she's fragile, always will be. My wife's pregnant. Third kid. I keep thinking, what kind of world am I bringing them into? We won the war, but it feels like we lost something in the winning. Morrison looked at her. You ever regret it, pushing so hard? Missing time with Sarah. Every single day. But you do it again. Every single day. He nodded. Stubbed out the second cigarette. Well, for what it's worth, I'm glad you did, even if it makes me an idiot for not listening sooner. That evening, Bessie took Sarah to the waterfront. The same place she'd stood with Kaiser 2 years earlier, watching ships break themselves in slow motion. Now the slips were empty. Production had slowed with Germany's surrender. Japan was next, everyone said. A few more months, maybe a year. Sarah held her mother's hand, oxygen mask hanging around her neck like a strange necklace. Mama, why do people die in wars? Because countries disagree, and sometimes disagreements turn violent. But you didn't fight. You just made things. Sometimes making things is fighting. Sometimes the best weapon is knowing how to build something that doesn't break. Did your ships break? Some did. Not as many as before, but some. And people died on those ships. Yes, baby. Sarah thought about this. But some people lived who wouldn't have otherwise. Yes. Then it was worth it. Right? Bessie knelt so she was eye level with her daughter. I don't know if it was worth missing your 8th birthday. Worth not being there when you needed your medicine at 2 a.m. Worth all the nights you were scared and I was in Seattle or Philadelphia or Brooklyn teaching strangers. Her throat tightened. I saved people I'll never meet and lost time with the person I love most. How do I calculate that? What's the math on worth? Sarah hugged her. Small arms around Bessie's neck, fierce and desperate. You taught me that helping people matters. Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. That's what you always said. I know. So maybe both things are true. Maybe it was worth it and also too expensive. Maybe that's okay. Bessie held her daughter and cried. 8 years old and already wiser than most adults. Already understanding that life wasn't equations with clean solutions, but messy compromises between competing goods. The surrender of Japan came August 15, 1945. Sarah had been in the hospital for 3 days with pneumonia when the announcement blared over the ward radio. Victory over Japan. The war officially over. Nurses were crying, hugging each other. Patients well enough to stand did so saluting or just raising fists in triumph. The whole hospital erupted in chaotic celebration. Sarah slept through it all, oxygen mask fogging and clearing with each labored breath. Bessie held her hand and thought about Marcus Webb, the young welder from Seattle, who'd shipped out on the SS Pacific Crown. She'd never heard whether he'd made it home. Probably never would. He was just one boy among millions, one life she'd touched briefly before the war swallowed him. But somewhere, maybe he was celebrating with his mother. Maybe the ship had held. Maybe her method had bought him enough time to survive whatever the Pacific threw at him. Maybe he was kissing a girl he'd dreamed about for 18 months, planning a future that included children and grandchildren who'd never know how close they came to not existing. Or maybe he was dead in a grave marked only by coordinates and a serial number. Both possibilities existed simultaneously until someone bothered to check. Thompson visited the hospital the next day, still wearing his party clothes from the night before. Drunk or still drunk, hard to tell. "We did it, Bessie. We actually did it. Won the goddamn war." "You're drunk." "I'm celebrating. There's a difference." He sat heavily in the visitor's chair. Naval report came in yesterday. Final statistics. Victory ships had a 94% survival rate for crew, even when sunk by enemy action. Liberty ships built before your method 67%. That's a 27-point difference. 27% more sailors came home because you argued with me in a conference room. And the 6% who didn't are dead. Like the 33% who were always going to die. Like all the boys in all the wars in all of history. Thompson leaned forward. "You can't save everyone, Bessie. You can only save who you can save. And you saved thousands. Literal thousands." "It doesn't feel like enough. It never does. That's how you know you did something that mattered." Sarah stirred in her sleep, coughed. Bessie adjusted her oxygen mask, checked her temperature. Still elevated, but lower than yesterday. "How is she?" Thompson asked. "Fighting, like always." "She's strong, like her mother." "She's fragile, like everyone." Thompson stood to leave. Paused at the door. "Kaiser's shutting down half the yards. War production ending. Thousands of workers getting pink slips, including me. My contract's up in 30 days. What will you do?" "Teach, maybe. MIT offered me a position. Engineering professor. I'd get to tell students about the welder who made me question everything I thought I knew." He smiled. "You'll be in textbooks, Bessie. In 50 years, engineering students will study balanced welding and learn your name." "I don't care about textbooks. I care about boys coming home." "I know. That's why you deserve to be in them." After he left, Bessie sat alone with her sleeping daughter and thought about legacy. What did it mean to be remembered? Did it matter if your name lasted when the people you loved didn't? Sarah would survive childhood, but barely. Her lungs were scarred, damaged, compromised. She'd never run without wheezing, never climb stairs without stopping, never lived the easy life that healthy children took for granted. And that was Bessie's fault too, in a way. Choosing work over vigilance. Choosing other people's sons over her own daughter's needs. The math didn't work. It never worked. Richmond Shipyard closed its final slip September 30th, 1945. The last Victory ship launched to empty fanfare. Most workers had already left, finding jobs in automobile plants construction, anything that didn't require building machines of war. Bessie attended the closing ceremony with Sarah. The yard looked strange quiet, missing the constant roar of production. Ghost of noise hanging in the air, where hammers and torches used to sing. Kaiser gave a speech about patriotism, innovation, American ingenuity. He thanked the workers, called them heroes, promised they'd always be remembered for what they'd built. Then it was over. Just like that. 3 years of 18-hour days, night shifts teaching, arguing, proving fighting. Over because the war was over and the country didn't need ships anymore. What happens now? Sarah asked. I don't know, baby. We figure it out. Will you teach again? Maybe, if anyone wants to learn. I want to learn. Bessie looked at her daughter. Learn what? To weld. Like you. To make things that don't break. You're 8 years old. So you were someone once before you were the woman who saved the fleet. I can be someone too. Bessie felt something shift in her chest. Pride maybe. Or hope. Or just the recognition that her daughter was tougher than damaged lungs and absent mothers, and a world that didn't know what to do with girls who wanted to build things. Okay, Bessie said. I'll teach you. When you're older. When your lungs are stronger. Promise? Promise. They walked home through streets suddenly full of men in uniform. Boys who'd been soldiers coming home to find jobs that didn't exist. Futures that looked nothing like the ones they'd left behind. Victory had come. But it had come too late for 405-399 Americans who'd never see it. Too late for the boys in the North Atlantic, the Pacific, the European theater. Too late for David Kowalski and all the names Bessie had memorized from telegrams she'd seen in 18 different shipyards. The ships had held. Most of them. The sailors had fought. Most of them. The war had been won, eventually. But freedom had arrived dragging a bill that would take generations to pay. And all Bessie could do was hold her daughter's hand and hope that the world they'd fought for would be worth the cost of winning it. The first year of peace was the hardest. Bessie found work at a machine shop in Oakland, welding industrial equipment for half her wartime pay. The owner hired her, reluctantly made it clear she was only there because all the men were either dead or finding better jobs elsewhere. You understand this is temporary, he said on her first day. Once things normalize, we'll need the position for a veteran. I understand. What she understood, the country had needed women when men were dying. Now that men were coming home, women were supposed to disappear back into kitchens and nurseries, pretend the war years never happened. But Bessie's hands remembered. Her body remembered. Every morning she woke at 500 a.m. muscle memory from 3 years of night shifts, refusing to let her sleep past dawn. She'd make coffee, check on Sarah, then sit at the kitchen table with her notebooks reviewing diagrams no one wanted to see anymore. Thompson wrote occasionally. He'd taken the MIT position, was teaching structural engineering to boys who'd just finished fighting. His letters were careful, academic, avoiding anything that sounded like nostalgia. The students are bright but arrogant. They trust math more than intuition. I'm trying to teach them what you taught me, that sometimes the answer isn't in the equation. Sometimes you have to listen. Most think I'm crazy. A few are starting to understand. Kaiser sent a Christmas card in 1945. Generic, pre-printed, signed with the secretary's handwriting. No personal note. Bessie threw it away. Morrison visited once spring of 1946. Showed up at her door unannounced, holding a bottle of whiskey and looking 10 years older than he should. I got fired, he said without preamble. New management at the yard. They're converting to commercial shipping. Don't need supervisors who specialized in wartime production. I'm sorry. Don't be. I deserved it. I was an ass. He held out the whiskey. Came to apologize properly. And to ask advice. My daughter, the baby, she wants to learn welding. Wife thinks I'm insane for considering it. Says welding isn't women's work. Bessie almost laughed. You asking me for permission to teach your daughter something I had to fight you to teach grown men. I'm asking if you think she can handle it. Physically. She's small, weak lungs like your Sarah. Sarah wants to weld too. I told her she has to wait until she's stronger. Will she ever be stronger? The question hung between them. Honest. Brutal. Both knowing the answer. Probably not, Bessie admitted. But she can be careful. She can be smart. She can learn to work within her limitations. Morrison opened the whiskey, took a drink, passed the bottle. To our daughters, may they be braver than we deserve. They drank on the porch until midnight, trading stories about the war, the ships, the boys who'd died, and the ones who'd come home broken. Neither of them cried. They were too tired for tears. When Morrison left, he shook her hand. His grip was firm, respectful. For what it's worth, Bessie, you were right. About everything. And I was a fool for taking so long to see it. We were all fools, Morrison. We just fooled ourselves in different ways. Sarah turned 9 in 1946, 10 in 1947. Her lungs didn't improve. She grew but fragile, like a plant stretching toward light it could barely reach. The medical bills never stopped. Bessie worked 6 days a week at the machine shop, took side jobs welding farm equipment on Sundays. She never told Sarah that teaching her to weld might be impossible. Never said that weak lungs and welding fumes were a dangerous combination. Just kept promising, when you're older, when you're stronger, knowing that day might never come. Then Marcus Webb found her. It was October 1948, 3 years since the war ended. Bessie was welding a fractured crane arm when someone knocked on the shop door after hours. She pulled off her helmet. Young man standing there, maybe 25, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit. Face she didn't recognize but somehow knew. Miss Hamill, I'm Marcus Webb. We met in Seattle, spring of 1944. I was shipping out on the SS Pacific Crown. The memory snapped into focus. Baby-faced welder volunteering for the Merchant Marine. She'd made him a promise your ship will hold. You're alive. Yes, ma'am. Barely. But alive. He stepped into the shop, moving with a limp she didn't remember. The Pacific Crown took 2 torpedoes off Okinawa. April 1945. Sank in 23 minutes. I was one of 47 survivors. The ship held together long enough for us to get the lifeboats launched. Naval report said it shouldn't have. Said the damage should have split the keel immediately. Bessie set down her torch. But it didn't. Because someone taught the welders who built that ship how to make steel that doesn't fight itself. Marcus pulled an envelope from his jacket. I went to Richmond looking for you. They said you left. Took me 2 years to track you down. I had to come. Had to say thank you. Had to tell you that my mother got to meet her grandkids because you were stubborn enough to argue with people who thought they knew better. He handed her the envelope. Inside, a photograph. Marcus in a hospital bed, bandaged and exhausted, holding a newborn baby. On the back, written in careful script, Marcus Jr., born March 3, 1947, named after the ship that brought his father home. Bessie's hands shook. You named your son after a ship. I named him after survival, after the chance you gave me. Marcus's voice cracked. 47 of us got off that ship. 47 families that aren't grieving. That's because of you. And the ones who didn't get off, the crew members who drowned while the ship was sinking slowly enough to give you time? They're why I'm here too. To tell you that even the ones who died had a chance. Even the ones who didn't make it died knowing their ship had held as long as it could. He wiped his eyes. That matters, Miss Hamill. In war, that's all we get. A chance. You gave us that. After he left, Bessie sat alone in the empty shop holding the photograph. A baby named after survival. A legacy measured not in medals or recognition, but in lives that continued forward generation by generation, because steel had learned to breathe. She went home and told Sarah the story. Her daughter listened quietly, then said, Mama, I want to meet him. Marcus Jr., when he's older. I want to tell him his name means something. What does it mean? That listening matters more than being loud. That caring matters more than being right. That one person paying attention can change everything. Sarah coughed, caught her breath. That's what you taught the world. That's what his name means. In 1951, Thompson published a textbook, Structural Integrity in Welded Construction. The entire 3rd chapter was about balanced welding. Bessie's name appeared 47 times. Diagrams she'd drawn in chalk on shipyard walls were now printed in ink, distributed to engineering students across the country. He sent her a signed copy with a note. "They're calling it the Hamill method now. I tried to tell them you'd hate the attention. They didn't care. Neither do I. You changed how we build. That deserves a name." Bessie showed Sarah the textbook. Her daughter ran her fingers over the printed diagrams, tracing the weld patterns like they were sacred text. "You're famous, Mama." "I'm documented. That's different." "Why?" "Because famous means people know your face. Documented means people know your work. I'd rather be the second." "Because the work matters more than the person. Because the work survives when the person doesn't." Sarah thought about this. "Then I want to be documented too. Someday. When I'm strong enough to weld." "You will be. Promise?" Bessie looked at her daughter, 12 years old. Oxygen tank beside the couch, medical textbooks scattered around her because she'd started reading about her own condition, trying to understand the enemy living in her chest. So much fight in such a fragile body. "I promise I'll try." The Korean War started in 1950. The shipyards reopened. The government called it a police action, but the telegrams looked the same as before. Yellow paper. Regret to inform. Died in service. Bessie was offered a supervisor position at Mare Island Naval Shipyard. Triple her current salary. Training contract for new welders. All the things that should have felt like vindication. She turned it down. "Why?" Sarah asked. "It's everything you worked for." "I worked to save lives. I did that. Now I'm working to keep you alive. That matters more." "But you could save more lives, more sailors, more Marcus Webbs. At the cost of missing more of your life. I already lost your 8th birthday, your 9th. Too many nights when you needed me, and I was in Seattle or Brooklyn or Philadelphia teaching strangers." Bessie's voice went hard. "I'm not doing that again. Let someone else save the world. I'm staying home." Sarah cried, not from disappointment, from relief, from finally having her mother present instead of always halfway out the door. That night, Bessie burned her notebooks, all of them. Every diagram, every calculation, every observation about how steel thinks and breathes and needs to be listened to. 3 years of work gone in an hour of flames. Thompson called it vandalism when she told him. Morrison called it waste. Kaiser, in a rare personal letter, called it a tragedy. Bessie called it freedom. "The textbooks have everything they need," she told Thompson over the phone. "The method is documented. The shipyards know how to teach it. They don't need me anymore." What if they forget? What if new engineers make the same mistakes? Then they'll relearn. Or they won't. But it won't be my responsibility anymore. I gave 3 years. That's enough. Is it? The question haunted her. Was it enough? Could it ever be enough when boys were still dying? Ships were still sinking. Wars were still being fought. But Sarah was 12 and fragile and needed a mother more than the Navy needed another supervisor. So Bessie chose, and lived with the choosing. The machine shop closed in 1954. Bessie found work at a technical school teaching basic welding to veterans on the GI Bill. Boys who'd seen combat learned to kill, now learning to build. Some of them were good. Some struggled. All of them carried weight that had nothing to do with welding technique. One student, Taylor 23, missing 3 fingers on his left hand, asked her after class, "You're the Bessie Hamill, right? The one from the war." "I'm a Bessie Hamill. Don't know about the..." "The textbook we're using mentions you. Says you changed how ships are built." "I made a suggestion. Other people implemented it." "That's not what my CO says. He was Navy, served on a Victory ship, says those ships saved his life." Bessie packed her tools. "Your CO give you his name?" "Lieutenant Phillips." "Why Commander Phillips?" "The man who'd read the stress reports in Kaiser's conference room, who'd said Hamill's method works, indisputably." "Tell him I said hello," Bessie said. "Tell him I'm glad he made it home." Sarah turned 16 in 1955. Her lungs had stabilized, not improved, but stopped deteriorating. She'd learned to manage her limitations, carry an inhaler everywhere, know her limits and respect them. And she'd learned to weld. Not from Bessie directly. From books, from observation, from watching her mother work in the garage on weekends. By 16, Sarah could lay a decent bead, understood heat control, could read metal stress by sound. "I want to apply to trade school," she announced one night. "Your lungs are mine to risk. You risked everything to teach strangers. I want to risk something to learn from you." They argued for weeks. Bessie terrified, Sarah stubborn. Finally, a compromise: Sarah could attend trade school if she worked in ventilated areas, took breaks every hour, always wore proper respiratory protection. Sarah agreed, thrived, graduated second in her class, got a job at a commercial fabrication shop making structural steel for buildings. "You're building things that don't move," Bessie observed. "Bridges don't sink. Buildings don't get torpedoed. Seems safer." Sarah smiled. "Plus, I'm using your method. The engineers here are amazed at how flat my welds stay. I told them I learned from the woman who taught the world that metal has memory." What did they say? They said they didn't know you had a daughter. I said, "That's because you chose me over fame." They didn't know what to say to that. Marcus Webb Jr. wrote Bessie a letter in 1959. He was 12. The letter was careful, clearly supervised by his father, but the sentiment was authentic. "Dear Miss Hamill, my dad says I'm named after a ship you helped build. He says you saved his life by teaching people to listen to steel. I don't understand welding yet, but I understand listening. My teacher says I'm good at it. Dad says that's because I'm named after survival, and survival requires paying attention. I wanted to say thank you for paying attention when nobody else would. Sincerely, Marcus Webb Jr." Bessie kept the letter in her wallet. Read it when the medical bills got too high, when Sarah had bad lung days, when she wondered if any of it had mattered. The letter said it had. That was enough. Henry Kaiser died in 1967. The obituaries called him an industrial titan, the man who'd built ships faster than the enemy could sink them. They mentioned Liberty ships, Victory ships, the miracle of American production. Some mentioned Bessie. Most didn't. At the funeral, Thompson found her in the back row. "He talked about you, in his last years. Said you were the bravest person he ever employed. Said you'd argued with him when everyone else just agreed. He gambled his empire on a welder's hunch. That's braver. Or stupider. Hard to tell the difference sometimes." Thompson sat beside her. Gray now stooped, but eyes still sharp. "I'm retiring next year. MIT wants me to write a memoir. Engineering history. They want chapters on the war, the ships, the Hamill method. Would you be willing to be interviewed?" "No." "Bessie, the work is documented. My name is in textbooks. That's enough. I don't need to be remembered. I need Sarah to graduate college. I need her to breathe without pain. I need to know that the life I chose, staying home instead of saving the world, wasn't a mistake." It wasn't. "How do you know?" Thompson pointed at Sarah, sitting 3 rows ahead, oxygen tank discreetly hidden, talking quietly with Kowalski's widow. "Because she's here, alive, whole, building things that last. That's not a mistake. That's a different kind of saving." Morrison died in 1969. Heart attack. His daughter, the one who'd wanted to learn welding, spoke at the funeral. She was a structural engineer now working on the Bay Area rapid transit system. She thanked her father for teaching her that stubbornness and growth weren't opposites. "He was wrong about a lot of things," she said. "Wrong about women. Wrong about change. Wrong about who deserved to be listened to. But he learned. Slowly, painfully, reluctantly, but he learned. That's all we can ask. That people admit when they're wrong and change anyway." Bessie attended the funeral with Sarah. Her daughter was 30 now, married to another welder, pregnant with her first child, despite doctors saying her lungs couldn't handle it. "I'm scared," Sarah admitted after the service. "Of what?" "That I'll die and leave my baby without a mother. Like you almost did. Like you chose not to." "I didn't almost die. I almost lost you by choosing work over presence." But you saved thousands. And almost lost the one person who mattered most. That's not a win, Sarah. That's a gamble that happened to work out. Sarah rested her hand on her belly. If this baby lives when this baby lives, I'm teaching them about you. About balanced welding and listening to steel and being stubborn enough to argue with the world. Teach them about compromise too. About knowing when to stop fighting. Did you stop really? Bessie thought about the textbooks with her name, the engineers using her method, the bridges and buildings and ships still being built with techniques she'd pioneered, the legacy that kept growing despite her attempts to walk away from it. No, she admitted. I just stopped volunteering. The work kept going without me. Because you built something that didn't need you to survive. That's the best kind of legacy. Sarah's daughter was born in 1970. They named her Bessie, Little Bess. She was small, premature lungs underdeveloped. She spent 3 weeks in NICU fighting for breath. On the day they brought her home, Sarah handed the baby to Bessie. Your namesake, your legacy. Don't let her forget where she comes from. Bessie held the infant, feeling the fragile weight, the shallow breathing, the sense that this tiny life was both impossibly strong and impossibly fragile, like steel under stress fighting to hold together. I'll tell her everything, Bessie promised. When she's old enough to understand. I'll tell her about ships and welding and listening to things everyone else ignores. I'll tell her that her great-grandmother was just a woman with a welding torch who happened to pay attention. That's not just anything, Mama. That's everything. Bessie Hamill died in 1987. Heart failure. Quick and relatively painless. She was 72 years old. The obituary in the Richmond paper was 3 lines. Bessie Hamill, retired welder, died peacefully at home. Survived by daughter Sarah, granddaughter Bessie, and 3 great-grandchildren. Services private. No mention of victory ships. No mention of the thousands of lives saved. No mention of the textbooks, or the method, or the revolution she'd started in a shipyard conference room 44 years earlier. The Associated Press picked up the story 3 days later. Someone had noticed the name, connected it to engineering history. That obituary was longer, more accurate, but still incomplete. It talked about innovation and wartime production, but missed the real story. The real story was the nurse who'd taken care of Sarah during Bessie's training tours. The husband who'd left because he couldn't handle a wife smarter than him. The grandson who became a structural engineer because his grandmother told him stories about steel that breathed. The great-granddaughter who became a materials scientist and won a MacArthur Fellowship for research on stress distribution in composite structures. The real story was the lives that branched outward from one woman's stubbornness, multiplying through generations, touching people who'd never know her name, but lived in a world made safer because she'd refused to be quiet. Thompson gave the eulogy at the public memorial MIT organized. He was 84, wheelchair-bound, but his voice was strong. Bessie Hamill taught me that intelligence isn't about degrees or credentials. It's about paying attention. She taught me that innovation comes from questioning assumptions, especially the ones everyone agrees on. She taught me that the quietest voice in the room might be the most important one if you're brave enough to listen. He paused, looked at the crowd of engineers, welders, students. We build things today because Bessie Hamill insisted that steel has a language, that metal remembers, that if you work with material instead of against it, you create something that lasts. That philosophy, that respect for the physical world, that's her real legacy. Not the ships, the listening. Little Bess, not so little anymore, 47 years old. Professor of materials science at Stanford, approached the lectern after Thompson finished. My great-grandmother told me once that she didn't want to be famous. She wanted to be useful. And then she wanted to be forgotten so she could focus on the people she loved. Bess smiled. She got 2 out of 3. She was useful. She focused on us, but forgotten, no. We don't forget people who change how we see the world. We don't forget people who teach us that caring is a form of genius. After the memorial, Marcus Webb Sr., now 72 himself, grandfather of 5, approached little Bess. Your great-grandmother saved my life. I named my son after that. He's named his daughter after her. 3 generations carrying forward the name of a woman who just wanted to make steel breathe. He handed Bess a photograph. The same one he'd given Bessie in 1948. I kept this all these years. Thought you should have it. Thought you should know that everything you are, everything you've built stands on the foundation of a woman who cared more than she was supposed to. Bess took the photograph, studied it. A young man in a hospital bed holding a newborn baby, both alive because someone had listened to metal. Thank you, she said, for remembering, for naming, for carrying forward. Thank you for being proof that her choice to come home to choose her daughter over fame wasn't a mistake. Look at you. Look at what came from that choice. Today, in 2025, the SS Jeremiah O'Brien is one of only 2 operational Liberty ships remaining. It's docked in San Francisco, a floating museum, a reminder of the ships that carried the war to victory. Below deck in the engine room, there's a small plaque most visitors don't see. It says, "In memory of Bessie Hamill, 1915 to 1987, and all the welders whose skill and dedication built the ships that brought our servicemen home." They taught us that listening is a form of courage, that questioning is a form of patriotism, that the quietest voice sometimes carries the most important message. Every year, on August 15th, Victory over Japan Day, little Bess makes the trip to San Francisco. Brings her children, her grandchildren, shows them the plaque, tells them the story of a woman who argued with engineers and one then walked away from fame to raise a daughter with weak lungs and a strong heart. Your great-great-grandmother changed the world, she tells them, then chose you over the world. Remember that. When you're given the choice between recognition and love, between fame and presence, between saving strangers and holding the people who matter most, remember that both choices cost something. But only one lets you sleep at night. The story of Bessie Hamill isn't taught in most schools. Her name appears in engineering textbooks, but rarely in history books. She never received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, never testified before Congress, never became the symbol of women's wartime contribution that she could have been. But every bridge that doesn't collapse, every building that withstands earthquakes, every ship that doesn't break in cold water, they all speak her language. They all carry her lesson. Listen to the material work, with its nature, give it room to breathe. That's the legacy that matters. Not monuments or museums or medals. Just the quiet, persistent truth that one person paying attention can change everything, and that choosing love over legacy doesn't diminish what you've built. It just changes who gets to see you build it. In the end, history remembers the loud. But the world is built by the ones who listen. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, those listeners teach us not just how to build better, but how to live better, how to choose, how to sacrifice, how to measure worth, not in recognition, but in the people we save, the lives we touch, the small stubborn acts of caring that ripple forward through generations. Bessie Hamill saved thousands, then saved the one life that mattered most. Both were acts of genius. Both deserve to be remembered. If you believe her name should live beyond textbooks, beyond plaques, beyond the 3-line obituary that almost erased her, share this story. Write her name in the comments. Tell someone that history isn't just made by the ones who shout. It's made by the ones who listen, who question, who care enough to argue with the world, and then care enough to walk away when the people they love need them more. That's the lesson. That's the legacy. That's what remains when the noise stops, and all that's left is the truth one woman with a welding torch taught the world how to breathe.